is I want you to see some poor folks, all right, who thank God that there is rent control because it gives these poor people a chance to live someplace, all right? First, let me show you a picture of this gentleman who has a home with a market value of $1,500. He's paying $351.60. Poor guy, all right? Now, do you remember the supermodel, Hutton, her name was? She's paying $468 or so for a $1,600 apartment. Oh, God, and here's a guy who fought for us all in the old days. Abby Hoffman, this cheap SOB, all right, has himself a $1,000 apartment, and he's strapped, paying $95.15 a month. Isn't it great how he learned to work with the political system? These, incidentally, are all given to us by Mr. Tucker. Mr. Tucker, are those factual? Those factual?
Sure. There's dozens and dozens more. Ted Sorensen, remember Ted Sorensen, President Kennedy's speechwriter?
Sure.
Here's a nice thing. He lives on Central Park West. He pays about $1,200 for an apartment, about 8 rooms, probably worth $2,500, $3,000.
8 rooms, it's got to be worth more than that.
He also has a home in Westchester, second home in Westchester. Has rent control.
What they do is they keep these homes forever and ever and ever, hand them down. The landlord never gets a fair profit out of those, Don.
That's not true in New Jersey. I would point out that in New Jersey, in Bergen County,
gravity
let me finish my statement. In Bergen County, the average tenant makes $18,000 a year. The average homeowner is making $32,000 a year. There's clearly a difference between the rich people are not living in rent-controlled apartments in New Jersey. You also cannot transfer leases in the state of New Jersey.
So we've got a different situation in New Jersey than we have. We don't, Bill?
Well, yes and no. I mean, New Jersey's only had rent control for about 10 years. New York has had 40 years for people to.
Yeah, New York's had since, I think, 46, haven't
it? If rent control started in Fort Lee, which were some of the richest people in Bergen County, was living in those high-rise apartments, they're still there.
Tell you what, rent control, we're going to find out if it's putting people in the streets and turning the buildings into slums. Join us in the next segment. What's happening with the rents out there, pal?
It's the same thing out there. I've never heard so much smoke blown by a bunch of drug pushers in all my life since what I've heard on the show so far. You know, when it really comes down to it, you're right. The poor people in this country have to have a place to live. And nobody's suggesting that we jerk the rug out from underneath their feet. Rent control is a drug. And this country, especially in places like New York and Santa Monica, are addicted to it. And the politicians are the ones that are shooting it in the veins of the tenants, and the pushers are getting rich. The problem is you can't undo the drug system by just saying no more rent control. You got to have a place to phase it out. If a pusher wants to go clean, he can't do it on by himself. And when you go clean from rent control, you can't do it by yourself. You got to have a mechanism so that people don't get kicked out on the street. But the bottom line is, if you take rent control and you say no more rent control in 10 years, you're going to see a building boom in New York and a building boom in every other city that's got rent control that's going to solve your housing problems in 10 years, and you are never going to see a building boom when you've still got rent control. And you can take that to the bank.
Okay, Jeff, while we're taking it to the bank, are we going to allow the landlords to take us to the bank, too? Is the building boom Zip for a second, Jeff.
Rent increases, and they never really can gouge the tenants during the phase-out period. You be smart about it. You don't use this smoke and fear stuff that all the rent control proponents use. They're trying to scare everybody. They're trying to keep the addiction there so they can profit and their political junkies can profit. That's all rent control is it's a political drug.
The thing that I resent most about all of these regulations is that they are denying or attempting to deny me of my God-given right, and that is to own property in Harlem. Right now, Harlem is owned by the city of New York, except for those of us who absolutely refuse to give up and allow the city to take our property. Believe it or not, property owners in Harlem do pay their taxes. There's an attitude that prevails that minorities lose their properties because they don't pay their taxes. That is the bottom line. That's why they take it. But when you have people in your building who are paying not a little, but no rent, because the regulations have made it easy for them to pay no rent and live for years in your building and pay no rent, You cannot pay your taxes. I work every day. I have maintained my building by the grace of God and because 3 of us work in it, my son, my daughter, and myself. That's how we've maintained it. We will maintain it that way.
All of these landlords coming in from New York, they got problems. Instead of going to City Hall to solve their problems, they're coming over here to
Why the hell should we have to go to City Hall to solve our problems? Why should we go to City Hall? Are they the answer to
They're
everything?
complaining about the laws that they're enacted in their city that's preventing them and hurting them. Go to the people who made those laws.
Get rid of the people who made those laws. Get rid of the people who made those laws. Let me talk to the next gentleman. Let me talk to you, sir.
You need to listen to us so that you don't make the same mistake.
You
Because
know, I'll tell you what bothers me. Sir, sir,
You're
sir,
supposed to make a
sir,
problem.
sit down. Sit down. Let me. Sit down. Sit down. Let this gentleman talk.
Say one other thing
Go ahead.
about the homeless situation too, before I go. Let me tell you one thing. I am very concerned with the homeless. I am involved in a homeless program in Harlem. I work with the homeless on Christmas and on vacations. I feed the homeless. I cook for them. I have them in my home. All right, you don't need to thank me. I'm not doing it for you.
Joan, pay no attention to him. You've had your say, sir. Shut up. If you don't want to shut up, get the hell out. Go ahead, Joan. You know what the real screw up here, Joan, is? The real screw up is that the people who are really going to be affected by this as the old timers die off in these rent control buildings are going to be the young people of this city. They're going to pay the huge rent.
Exactly.
And that's not fair.
And I'd like to say one other thing that's very tragic in a community like my own. Many of the people who own 1 building, 2 buildings, maybe 3 buildings, these buildings have been their livelihood since before the beginning of rent control. These people are now having high blood pressure, all kinds of problems because the forms and the procedure and the summons and the complaints.
All right, Joan,
and
but you
tenants
will
who
admit,
used to pay their rent don't do it
you
anymore.
will admit there are some rent gouging landlords out there, all
By
right?
and large, they are developers. They are people who own many buildings. They are not your small property owners. These people have had relationships with their tenants for years. This is really not a tenant-landlord problem. It is a housing situation.
All right.
And rent control is